in this episode.
I'm not interested in 120 Days of Sodom. You know, I'm not interested.
Yeah. I was. Oh,
I'm not interested
the way
in that.
you said that. Oh, you're not interested in that, Chad? That doesn't tickle your fancy?
No.
Welcome. You're listening to PaleoCheeze Podcast, episode 14, part 1. Real life horror, serial killers, empathy, and forgiveness.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Chad Lutzke.
And I'm Jeremiah Bannister.
And you're listening to PaleoCheeze Podcast, part of the Project Entertainment Network. We're the podcast where a seasoned horror veteran holds the white-knuckled hand of a horror newbie as they explore the genre together, film by film.
And that white-knuckled newbie is me, bro.
Yeah. It is, dude. And
it is. I am the worst.
Obviously, because we threw the Chaise Lounge out on the curb for anyone who wants to pick it up. we should announce why we did so. And basically, and I think we touched on this on our last episode with Armand Rosamilia, where we talked about it kind of goes back to our episode with Jeremy Wagner when you confessed the sin of never seeing Jaws, and him having literally a jaw-dropping reaction to that.
It's hilarious.
It is. And that sparked a conversation on Twitter. And then when I found out, for me, which was worse than Jaws, that you had never seen Evil Dead, and that there were so many other films that for a person who can literally recall and write down every horror movie that they've seen, that's something special. That's something different, bro.
Yeah, I did, dude. I could recall, and the only one that I missed that I can so far, because I'm probably gonna stumble on stuff and be like, oh, I think I've seen that. Mm-hmm. Like Poltergeist was that, I was like, I don't know if I've ever seen that. Right. And I got into Poltergeist and then was like, oh yeah, wait a second, that psychic lady, Yeah. So I knew, but Friday the 13th, the first one, right? I as far as I knew, I'd only seen the Jason in Manhattan, right? So it's the only one I'd seen that I thought I'd seen. But then I was watching it, I'm like, oh, and I didn't remember a lot of the film, but there were certain key parts that I did. And so I figured that I've seen a significant amount of it. But, there were things that I very, very key parts of the story that I was either I'd forgotten or was just completely unaware of, or I just missed it. Right. Maybe I was stoned. Yeah, I might have been really ripped. There's a handful of years of my life that are kind of a blur. And so, but yeah, I admitted that I hadn't seen Jaws. I admitted that I'd never seen the Evil Dead. And then it was this long list of things, right, on Twitter. And I rattled off a whole bunch of them. And people were shocked. One guy was like, yeah, you have, what? You haven't seen Raiders of the Lost Ark? I mean, it was like one of these kind of things that, everybody's seen Raiders. And so, and I have seen that. Okay. That's one I've seen. But there were all of these movies, and so many of them really important to the canon, right? Yeah. And so once I started laying those out, there were a lot of people, their mouths just dropped, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is insane. Like, why haven't you seen this? And there's, of course, the backstory. I mean, you grow up in a home where that's just not, you're not allowed to really watch it. And we talked with Armand about that, even talking about some of the scary movies I did see, like the Thief in the Night series, which dude, when you're trapped in a church all night long, and it's one of those lock-ins, man, and you're there for youth group, and it's super dark, and it's raining outside, and it's 2 a.m, and they crank on this thing about the Antichrist hunting people down in caves and putting barcode tattoos on their forehead to buy stuff. And then with a guillotine, with their head getting chopped off into a laundry basket, that's kind of scary, and especially when you don't know it's coming. They didn't like put it on a poster like, oh, by the way. And to admit, there's kind of that cliche that they use where they're like, yeah, it's meant to scare the hell out of you kind of thing. And that's, but that's the goal of that. And so that was really terrifying. I had serious nightmares for a while. So there were all these movies and there were so many just that I'd never seen. And so here we are.
And we'll be perfectly transparent here and state that the reason for the transition too is Jeremiah and I both love movies of all genres. I love The Notebook. I'm sure I cried. That's just how I roll. And but then I love Evil Dead too, so but our audience and the people that, particularly the people that the company that I keep, being a horror writer or dark fiction writer or whatever, most of my friends are horror fans, and at heart that is my go-to genre. I've been a horror freak since I was like 5, so it made sense to when I found out that Jeremiah was such a virgin to most of this, and that not only because it was not something that was in his house, but also because of some underlying fears like poisonous turtles and sharks, non-existent sharks in swimming pools, and the dark and things like that later on,
spiders, tornadoes, thunder, lightning, and muskie, right? The northern pike with big huge shark shaped teeth, because I saw magazines, man, as a kid, and it was all those fisher magazines. It's like fishing porn, right, where everything is exaggerated, and it has this muskie on the front and his teeth are just glistening, as it's kind of swimming through and everything, and it's these massive, almost piranha like teeth to it. And I remember asking, saying, oh my gosh, is there pike in our lake? And they're like, oh yeah, I go fishing for pike all the time. And they don't even know, but inside my mind I'm thinking, dude, I'm a dead man. I used to go tubing all the time. I loved tubing. And you mentioned poisonous turtles, and people might think that's funny, but that's actually true. You didn't just pull that out of a magic hat. It's something that again, as a kid growing up on a lake, you go fishing, and I used to go fishing, and I saw this turtle, and my buddy's like, he's kind of a jerk. I think he went to juvie for something bad, and he used to call me Germ. He was one of the only people that ever did that. But he told me, he said, dude, you got to watch out, man. Those things are poisonous. And I'm like, what? He said, oh yeah, man, we got poisonous turtles in this lake. And it totally freaked me out. And I kind of didn't believe him. And I went out with my dad, and we went on a speedboat and everything. My dad's fishing and stuff. And we come back in, and I know it's unrelated, but it was kind of fueling this fear of danger in the water and things you don't see. We come in, and my dad, I'm telling him I'm kind of nervous about stuff. He's like, oh, there's nothing to be afraid of. He hops out of the boat and steps into this kind of seaweed in the foam up against the shore. And man, he steps right down and he screams, ah, and he lifts up his foot, and there is a bullhead, dude. And it's like the little sticky thing underneath their fin. That thing was stuck in his foot, and that fish was just chilling, just right up against his foot. And he pulled it out, and blood started draining down his foot. And I see this, and I'm like, you've lied to me, man. like this is evil in here. And from that point on, like going out and swimming, I used to swim to the dock, or the little pontoon raft that'd be out, 15, 20 feet out. No more. I used to go on tubing, and I still tubed for a long time. I'd still go tubing. And my parents, they'd always be shocked at how, for some reason, man, I would never let go. Like I was amazing, like an Olympian tuber, right? And it's because I was freaking out about falling off, man. Like the idea of falling off, it's, poisonous turtles, shark teeth, pike that are like jaws and stuff, bullheads that are going to poke me. And so all of this stuff as a kid, and even last thing I'll say, man, I used to be even afraid of people coming in at night and stabbing me. And so I would put extra blankets on, to the point that I'm sweating profusely, thinking that, well, this will stop it. So all of this stuff, I'm like a pretty dumb, smart kid. And you know, like the village idiot that's read some books. And so that's kind of what it was like for me. And even though a lot of that stuff went away, I still have some irrational fears. Even though a lot of that went away, it conditioned me to basically say nothing to see here whenever I'd go to, you know, popcorn video or whatever that was called, you know, that they used to have, or Blockbuster or whatever, family video, and you go there and there's the horror section and you see all the scary stuff. I mean, it was like horse blinders, dude, just walk past it, don't look, kind of stuff. And so that's how it played out. And so we were friends all that time, and I knew you were into horror, but you never knew that about me, which is kind of funny. You know?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
You know, what's ironic is, with all of your inexperience with the films and the fears that you've had, you are not afraid of the thing that I am afraid of. The one thing that gets me in a movie to have reservations about even watching it, and that's possession films.
Yeah, no.
Demon possession. That doesn't bother you, and it gives me the chills.
Yeah. Well, I think that's because of my studies in theology and stuff, and some personal experiences that I won't go into on the show today. People can talk to me privately and say, hey, you know, have you ever dealt with exorcism stuff before? Talk to me about it. But, you know, so there are things that I've experienced in my life, being raised Pentecostal with deliverance seminars and stuff like that. So I've seen some weird junk. And so when I watch these movies that are about that, you know, I'm kind of like, well, that's fantastical. You know, that's not, it would be scarier for me. There's a documentary that I don't know if I'd watch. I think he may have been, in fact, the Catholic priest at The Exorcist, who was in some ways connected with the movie that was talking to them about exorcism. He was a popular exorcist, in fact, and he died not long ago, within the last couple of years, if I'm remembering correctly. But there's a movie about him and a documentary about it, and they even have audio footage of people speaking during these exorcisms. And I remember watching the trailer for it, and you hear this voice where it's multiple voices at the same time. It's you can't. I don't know how you could create that, right, with the natural voice and stuff. And this person doing that, and I mean, it freaked me out. So that would scare me in real life, right? For those, you know, for different reasons. But yeah, watching Exorcist, or, you know, was it Emily Rose, wasn't it? Yeah. So seeing that, no, you know, even well, Hereditary is different. Hereditary is a different deal. You know, that's So yeah, but that's a funny thing, because that's something that freaks you out. Yeah. And it's also funny, I don't know if we mentioned this before, maybe we have, but that I watched Dead Alive with you. Yeah. You showed me Dead Alive.
Which I think, because that always seems to be kind of like that is not a gateway film. You know, that's you think you've seen it all? Check this out. So it's like a last little line kind of thing, you know? So I think because you had watched that, that I was just under the impression that you know, you'd had your cherry popped.
It's like never smoking weed and then just doing a whole bunch of
heroin.
PCP. Some angel dust. You're just like, well, I'm just gonna go for some angel dust for my first time around.
Right. And then you're like, so what's pot feel like? And I'm like, what? You've been shooting up every day for the last 15 years.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's true, man. And that's also probably why I had to have you because if you remember, man, I had you turn that bugger off like 4 times to pause it, because I'm like, bro, I'm gonna puke. I'm like, this is so intense. I'm like, bro, I was getting nauseous watching, and that's probably why, man. You know, it's like there was no kiddie pool for me.
Right.
It was just throw me into that. Right in the deep end. You know, and so we've been having fun with this, man, and like we've seen some that are connected with the format that it feels so long ago, like, you know, last week basically. that we were doing the old format, the good old days, Chad. But no, doing movies like Phantasm, doing movies like Hereditary. We did what's Just Before Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so those were super cool, and in fact, I love them. But I also admitted in there, that, and people can laugh at me and go, "Bro, you gave this movie this rating? Are you serious?" And now they kind of might have a better idea to be like, okay, compared to what, he hasn't seen a lot, so it's just, to him, it's like, going on the kiddie ride, the kiddie roller coaster at the local fair. And white knuckling the daylights out of that, as your eyeballs are popping out of your head, and you're like, dude, this is so dope. And you're like, really, dude? Really? Now, I don't want to say that about those movies though, because I like Just Before Dawn, and I think I always will. so it's not the kiddie ride, but you know what I'm saying is that a lot of this is going to maybe be that way, to where I've just never been on, and I'm going to date myself saying this, but I've never been on the Magnum. I was in real life, but imagining that I'd only been on the smaller coasters. And I'm like, bro, have you been on the Mean Streak or the Blue Streak?
The Blue Streak, dude. That's like the first one there.
Yeah, at Cedar Point, being like, have you been on the Blue Streak? And they're like, what, bro? That's been a minute. And so, yeah, but that's so I'm excited about it. We laid out the movies that I'd seen, and I've seen, it's funny too, that I have this blind spot because I've watched a bazillion movies. Like if I were to write out every movie I've seen some of the greatest movies that have ever been made, and a lot of them that are, goofy or whatever that I think are really fun, and things like that. But I've seen a ton of film. I've studied film, right? I've started to study it as a craft and as an art form and stuff like that, in art theory, for example, and theater and stuff like that. And yet here, all the while, I could talk all day long about a whole bunch of different genres, but then there was this one, and it just happens to be your forte, Chad.
Yes,
your identity, actually.
and I'm super excited, and it's funny because I keep thinking about all these different movies, and I'm like, how can I really scare them, or what's he really gonna like be like? Oh, dude, that was almost too much, or I mean, and obviously there's a line that we don't want to cross. I'm not interested in 120 Days of Sodom. I'm not interested.
The way you said that. Oh, you're not interested in that, Chad? That doesn't tickle your fancy?
No. I'm not big on torture porn. I liked Saw. There's been a couple intelligent films that I did like, but stuff like Hostel that just doesn't seem to have any real intelligence behind it. I'm not.
Human Centipede. What do you think about that? I've seen that. I didn't put that on the list, but I've seen that.
I have not seen that, dude.
Oh, so yeah, Human Centipede. You know what it's about, though.
Oh yeah.
I mean, bro, it's not right, man. It's one of those that's kind of it's torture. It's like torture porn. You know what I mean? I mean, what's grosser than that, other than Salo or whatever, the Sodom.
Yeah.
And so it's, to me, they're in the same category, and I have zero interest in that. I don't care if they're like, well, yeah, but it kind of is based on this historical. No, I don't even care, dude. So there might be things that are over the line. And as I've said many times, I'm not a big fan of watching films that have nudity, right? Yeah. I like films that, and even scary ones. And I've been doing kind of the thing where I'm taking note when there is nudity, writing down the timestamps. And that way, because I really am sincere. I really want to go on to IMDb and see what it takes to begin. If it's just anybody can post, if that's the case, dude, I'm totally doing it. And I'm going to start posting under these movies and say, look, for people who want to watch this movie because it's good, but you may just simply say, well, that's a gratuitous booby scene. What's the reason for that? That if you don't want that, or you're watching it and you think, well, this might be a suspenseful movie for kids and it's not a bunch of gore, but it's got a couple scenes that are inappropriate. Well, here's the timestamp. Skip over it. You know what I mean? So, but I'm not into that. So I'm not a huge fan of tons of sex and nudity in movies.
And you've really been enjoying sharing all of this with your kids too. Not all of this, but you've been really enjoying being able to, check on IMDb for the parental advisory, and if things are okay, then and if I say, sometimes you'll ask me, and I'm like, yeah, I think that just watch out for the beginning of Phantasm or something. There's some TNA there, but so that you can watch it with your kids, or you'll watch it with them after you've already seen it. And so I go to that too. I go to IMDb, and I have checked their parental guidance thing for years, because my youngest now is 15, so there's really nothing that I'm like, you can't watch that. I mean, there's a huge difference between like a horror film and like a rated R comedy.
Yeah,
those can get really, really raunchy.
yeah.
And let's face it, he's 15. He has seen way more than I'm sure I'm aware of. I've been that age, and
yeah, but we used to have to find crinkled up sticky magazines out in the woods, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
Like random stuff, like who left this thing here? Oh, kind of stuff.
Right.
And with them, I mean, it's right there, fingertips,
right there. Yeah, all the time. Yeah. So yeah, that's that would be cool to list that for those who want to steer clear of that.
At that age and stuff, and like, it's one of these things. And you bring up the kids, man, like, we've been watching films, this week's been kind of weird. It's been a very difficult week. It's the week that a lot of very significant situations in my daughter's life. It's the 4-year anniversary of a lot of those that are extremely painful and sad. So I was actually not in the real world for a while. Chad knows this. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know. That's why our podcast with Padavano was late, was because of me. I mean, I was like, what day is it? It was Saturday, dude. So, I mean, I was not, my brain was just, and my heart was just not there. But I've been watching stuff with the kids. I've gotten some books come in the mail, but I'm reading On Writing with you, or not with you, but you've encouraged me to read it. Yeah. And so I'm doing it, right? I'm following the advice, man, because I'm in the main stretch for the book here. And so it's really pumping me up. But I got Drive-In. I got that in the mail, right? Awesome. 3 of them, right? The 3. It's a really cool cover too. I love the art in there, the colors, the brightness of everything. It's really cool. And I also got Bird Box. Okay. And I'm supposed to be getting My Name is Legion. I think that's what it's called. It's the book from Phantasm that's on the younger brother's desk. Yeah. So I looked it up and I said, that kind of looks like a cool book. And so it's supposed to be coming in the mail, and I want a copy of On Writing for my library, because I prefer that to ebooks personally. Mm-hmm. But so I haven't been reading a whole bunch, but I have been watching stuff, with the kids. And my kids, because of this decision, my kids have this interest too, and they like scary stuff. And so we watched some things, and I'm glad that, going through these movies and finding the spots that are bad, because they loved Phantasm. Phantasm is an awesome movie, and they loved it, and they loved the soundtrack to it. They loved Halloween. They thought Halloween was amazing. In fact, Halloween's their favorite. Even the soundtrack is their favorite. And so all we had to do was find out, well, where are the scenes that might be inappropriate and stuff. And afterward, what we've been doing is, of course, skipping over those scenes, and they know they're in there, right? So they're not like aloof to it. So when they're older, they're, but the thing is that after it's over, we talk about it, and we talk about the makeup and the costumes, about misdirection. What is that? Dramatic irony. What is that? The idea of what other movies have these actors been in, and actresses? What else have they been in that you might even know? There was one, I forget which character in what movie, but it was like, they're like, wait a second, I think that's one of the voices from, the Chipmunks or something. Or they were on a Chipmunk movie, and another one was on that show We Bear Bear, or what. I don't know much about it, but my kids like it. And so, it's one of those things. And so they see, okay, so that person didn't die. And it was great, because my daughter, she brought this up. We were watching a movie, and she goes, Papa, you know how I know this isn't real? And I said, how do you know that? And she said, because there's somebody recording it. And she goes, that means somebody's in the house, like with a camera. And she's like, imagine if there was somebody in this room right now, like, who would that be? It's not our family. It would have to be somebody else with a camera. And I said, not only that, but they would have to take that, and somebody would have to edit it, right? And you'd have to put music with it because there's no music. Like, do we open the door if a bad guy's hiding behind a door and he comes out? Are you going to all of a sudden hear a whole bunch of crazy screeching violins and cymbals clashing? Or is it just a creepy dude coming out killing you? And I'm like, so they're understanding that they have literacy, a kind of literacy with the craft of movie making, and specifically with things that are otherwise scary, and treating it more like a roller coaster ride in a way, and to say, we know what we're getting into. It's a limited amount of time. And in most of these stories, in most of them, there is at least some kind of a hope, even if they get away, right? Like in Halloween, Michael Myers flees and he's gone, and you're like, oh my gosh. But she's alive.
They need to watch Halloween 2 then, because Halloween 2 begins at it's the same night. It begins at the very end of Halloween.
Yeah.
There's some boobies in there, but I know where they're at.
We can find them. And I have my wife find them too. Like, so if people go, well, Jeremiah, are you flipping through the movie to find out? You're like, you're targeting it. Like, you're intentionally going through. It's like, no. My wife is doing that. And then she gives me the list, and she'll even line them up and say, like, well, in this, they're just kissing on a couch or something. Right. And how inappropriate is it? But this opens up a lot of things the kids might be able to see. And it doesn't shelter them where all of a sudden they get in this crazy world, because truth is, I lived that. And I'm not wanting to dog my parents. I have zero regrets for the way that I was raised. Right. At the same time, it doesn't mean that I want to emulate everything about it. And it means, there were some things that I felt like I went through where I had a fear that was unnecessary to have, because it hadn't been really talked out in a way that made me think about that and say, well, wait a second. Okay. That's not a real guy in the closet. How would a person even get in our home? We have a security system that and stuff like that. And so if he did, it would beep, 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 beep. Like, we would have something like that. And what's the likelihood? Like, how often does this stuff happen? We have reports on death, so we can actually go and look at that and find out how many, because there are people like that in real life that will go in and do terrible things to families. And that's real, which is also, I think, why they liked watching Halloween more, because there was an element of that they said was more scary than other ones that might just be gross. Because Michael Myers, for example, he's like hiding behind a tree, or he's in a car behind them, and that he's in another room kind of standing there and stuff, and they're oblivious to it. And that's terrifying. And yet they know too that, like, in fact, and that's the last thing I'll say about it, because this is real. We live in the city, and we have really cool neighbors. We have a really great neighborhood watch and stuff. And our neighbor across the street, they were out, I think, in the alley behind his house. And he said, my daughter was riding her bike in the alley, which, we were new there, and we never had alleys before, and we didn't really think about that. And he said that there was a car, man, that was creeping for real. And he walked out there and saw it and was like, whoa. And he went out and told her and said, hey, sweetheart. And he told us later, and we had to talk to her about alleyways, being by yourself, stuff like that. Don't do certain things, be with your brothers and stuff. And so we had to have that conversation. But, that kind of thing, that there are people that you're oblivious, you're happy riding your bike. That's a real fear. And so to even, it opens up conversations to have on how to protect yourself from real things too. So it's been not just, debunking certain monsters or showing the flaws in it, and even talking about the bloopers and saying, look, go, because IMDb has all of them, dude. So you can go and you can say, well, in this scene, their microphone is showing, or in Phantasm, the rope on the casket is showing. And so you can show the bloopers in that, and it just brings it down to a place of being scared in a fun way.
Yeah, which is important for kids. Even me as an adult, if I watch something, I mentioned earlier about only being really frightened of like possession films, but I wouldn't call it being frightened, but I also get there are types of films that can really disturb me. Films like where I kind of like Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. I know you haven't seen it, but any listener who's seen it probably understands what I'm talking about. really, really dark film that makes you feel kind of just dirty after. And like almost like I wish I wouldn't have seen that. So in the movies like that that kind of torment you, I will throw on Family Guy or something really lighthearted to something bright and lighthearted. Three's Company reruns or what have you. So
man,
for a kid to be able to have something where it's like, see, this is how fake this is, and point out inconsistencies in the film or little, the boom mic showing or whatever. It helps,
Yes, it helps. And it helps not just in quelling their irrational fears, but but allows you to discuss things that are legitimate things to be afraid of. So you can kind of separate the wheat from the chaff on that and say, like, this is something that's legit. Here's something that's not legit, and not to lose sleep over things that are not legit. And I think that that's important. And so it's been really cool, man. Let's just put it that way. And plus we love it. My daughter, she'll be on my side, or my son, they'll be all cuddled up by me. And like, when it gets really, she's like, wah! And she climbs up, man. Yesterday, she was like on top of my head, and I'm like all kinked over, man, my neck. And she's like, her arms are like all around me as she's watching, and so it's a lot of fun. And we always have a good conversation afterward. And they are always, of course, they watch stuff that's fun. So like they'll watch Batman or Super Friends or play Minecraft or something like that. That kind of gets them back into, normal life, if you can say that about any of those things I just said, but to get them back to that happy place, you know what I mean? And just everything working out good for the good guys all the time. And so it's been really cool, man. And even, I know it's weird, and it'll be interesting to see how this plays out in especially older films, maybe even newer ones, like at least from what I kind of know about, what's the film? It Follows?
Oh yeah, can't wait for us to watch.
Yeah. But like that, where it seems like a lot of the people who end up getting killed are people who are having premarital sex, right? Like, and the people who are not doing that end up being the ones who don't get killed. You're like, and it's like maybe it was the culture, and it kind of played into other fears, whether sexually transmitted diseases or whatever, but that you kind of see that, and whether it's Halloween or and not everybody, because I mean you have other ones, like the person who provided the venue in Friday the 13th, man who owns the camp. I mean, he gets jacked, right? He's a dead guy, kind of thing. And then it's the mom, and so there's a lot of these things, like the mom, and she wasn't watching when so it's like, I think there's a lot of these kind of things that maybe play into it. I wonder about it. I'm not saying I think about it,
I don't think I brought this up before. I did bring it up. Actually, I think I've just talked to my mom about it. But here's some irony for you. You just saw Friday the 13th, a mom revenge movie because the camp counselors are flirting with each other instead of watching the mom's son, and he drowns. Well, when I was a kid, I told you that I think I mentioned before that I had a severe fear of water, of drowning. I mean, that went away by the time I was, I don't know, 12 or something like that. But when I was really young, I really had a fear. And apparently at some point I had some swimming lessons when I was young that I don't really remember. And my mom was watching me from the bleachers or something, and or she was there, attending my swimming lessons. The people that were supposed to be watching me, this girl and this guy, they were sitting there flirting. Apparently I was drowning in this pool, and they were not paying any kind of attention.
Wow, dude.
But the irony here is I was born on Friday the 13th. And so
really?
I thought that was, yeah.
I didn't know, dude. I didn't know this, bro.
And when I put two and two together, I called and I told my mom about that. And I was like, I don't think she's seen Friday the 13th, but I was like, isn't that kind of ironic?
Yeah, it's kind of weird, dude. I never even put the 13th, right? I've known in the past because I've been to your birthdays before. We have a video, man, actually on I think you turned 30. And there was a video that we made that day where in fact, I think we were just talking. It wasn't,
last year, 30,
Yeah, last year, when you turned 30 years old. It seemed like so long ago, Yeah. And so, but I think we have a video from that. So like, I've known this, but I never even put 2 and 2 together on that to be like, was it a Friday?
Yeah.
Or like what day of the week? I never even like thought about that till you just said it. So dude, that's crazy, man. And so I'm really interested in this whole project. And when you brought it up to me and you're like, okay, how do you want to do this and everything? Because I'd made the reaction video too, to Jaws, which is kind of weird, dude. That people like that. And we were kind of wondering if anybody knows where they've been sharing that. Like, we'd like to thank them, because it was just so weird and stuff. It's so different. But that, the idea of saying, okay, we love talking about all these different movies. We talk about books, we talk about music, and we're like super artsy about it. We'll go way off into one time, Butch Cassidy, and do that November, things that are not necessarily new or things that people may have even heard about. And then go to things like Were Rooster, for example, or Killer Sofa, especially. And
Talk about scary movies.
Yeah, right. And so, like, to see these and to say they're so it's unpredictable. And we really love doing this. This is a lot of fun, but we really want we want to do something that really connects with people and that kind of has a fan base that's not so hit or miss. That's like, well, are we kind of a vaudeville act, that it's just really random, unpredictable things like, what are they going to do this week? Because then the question is, really, to be honest, why should I care this week, kind of thing. And that's a true thing. It's a real thing when you come to marketing a program and host talking it out. And so you were like, look, man, you've never seen this stuff. It's your life, right? You're like, I've seen all of this. Like I'm encyclopedic about horror and all of the, all the different movies and books and things like that over the years. And so, and that there's a base of people that there's a fan base in that genre, particularly that they really enjoy that. And that there's a genre of people that, and I know I was kind of harsh toward one guy online. I said his fetish was showing, but it under one of our videos. But the thing is like, there are people who like to watch other individuals get really scared and say like, oh, we want to see this guy crap his pants. Like, that would be hilarious. And they get a sick kick out of that. Like watching, a fire of a house on the news. There's a feeling that somebody gets watching that. That's not like that they like to watch it, but they like the fact that it's not them. And there's something about that too, watching somebody get scared or just simply experiencing something for the first time. You brought up, as the example, those dudes, man, who listen to metal, and they're like super hardcore. They've never listened to metal before, death metal or whatever. And they pop on those headphones and you can watch these reviews of that. And where they reaction videos and stuff. And so to have an element of that, but still have the elements where we're talking about books, we're talking about music, we're interviewing authors, and even other people who are into film and video stuff and everything else, and acting even. We have a lot coming down the road with this, but that this just works out, dude.
Speaking of music, we don't talk about it often, but I moved my stereo out of my I've got 2 stereos, one CD player and then I got my turntable. I moved my turntable and speakers out of my office and I put it in my living room because the back windows of my office face a house that's close by, and so I don't want to like blow them away. And I listen to music a lot while I'm cleaning the house, while I'm cooking. So I just thought it would be a better place to put the turntable. And as a result, I've been listening to more vinyl and less CDs, and I have hundreds of records. But I bought some new ones recently, and I bought I bought a Plasmatics record that has some of my favorite. I know you probably don't know them, but they have some of my favorite songs on that particular record. And I bought 2 albums that I already had on tape and CD, but they are new age albums by an artist named Patrick O'Hearn, who used to play for a band called Missing Persons. I don't know if you're familiar with them either.
No.
80s new wave pop band that were really popular.
New wave or new age? Or both? New age music from a band that was doing new wave.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And people might not know that about you, dude, that you're into like even new age music. I like Yanni. It's about as close as I get to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't listen to, I like Yanni. I don't listen to much of his stuff anymore. I listen to more like synth heavy, less orchestra stuff. But more like synth heavy, real ambient type things. But Patrick O'Hearn is definitely my favorite new age artist. And I found a couple of his albums that I thought were going to be costly on eBay, and they were not. So I think they were like $12 a piece or something. So I grabbed that Plasmatics record. But yeah, I've been having a blast. And my wife, a while ago, I bought Danzig's first album on CD. I had it on cassette for years, and I remember when it came out in like 89, I was really, really disappointed because what I knew of Glenn Danzig was the Misfits, one of my favorite punk bands of all time. And then he's got this metal thing he's doing, and I was constantly being disappointed in the 80s with bands that would put solid debut albums out and then go metal. DRI did it. It was a slow transition, but they did it. Suicidal Tendencies did it. And Danzig. And so I can appreciate them now more. But at the time, there were real disappointments. Anyway, I am a fan of Danzig. I'm not a fan of his whacked out beliefs in the whole Satanism thing. It's actually kind of hilarious, and it's hard to take him seriously.
Yeah.
But to me, he is one of the greatest songwriters that has ever lived. I mean, I know that you're not familiar with a lot of Misfits stuff, but if you familiarize yourself with that stuff, it is the most brutal earworms that you cannot get out of your head. The most catchy, like, stuff. And he just he wrote all of that stuff on either keyboard, bass, or guitar, told everybody else how to play it, and he wrote every single riff and everything else from all of the Misfits and all of his solo stuff. And he's got several solo albums, and Sam Hain, his band after the Misfits. But what's funny, the reason why I bring it up is after getting the debut Danzig on CD instead of just having it on cassette, because I never listened to my cassettes. I played it one day, I think, for my wife. My wife, she likes the Misfits. She's not gonna throw a patch on her coat or purse or something, but when I'm playing the Misfits, she hums along and she gets the song stuck in her head and stuff. It's not anything that she is like, hey, let's listen to the Misfits, or if she's driving around and listening to the Misfits. It's just it's the one punk band that she's like not going to complain about if I have well, maybe if I put the Earth AD album on, then she won't tolerate as much. But Danzig, dude, she during this time that we're going through the quarantine thing, her business has she's lost some business. She owns her own cleaning company, and with people stuck at home, particularly a couple months ago, they didn't really need her. I mean, she has other clients and stuff that did in places of business, but she has been spending a lot of time honing some of her like her learning to watercolor, because she's an artist that touches countless mediums: photography, sculpting, painting, in various mediums. And watercolor is one, so we got a whole bunch of watercolor stuff, really nice brushes and paints and everything. So she has spent hours and hours, and she often listens to music while she's doing this. And dude, that freaking Danzig CD, man, she's always listening to it. She's sitting there. She hates the lyrics, and she feels kind of, convicted of even listening to some of it. I mean, they're not super blatant or anything. It's not like Slayer's first record or something. But
I feel that way listening to Perfect Circle sometimes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But man, she is addicted, and so I bought the second Danzig record.
Yeah.
And but it's so funny because I'll be off writing somewhere outside or whatever in my office, and I walk out and she's listening to that Danzig album, man. It's just if people knew my wife, she's one of these people who, yes, she likes music, but if she never heard a song for the rest of her life, she'd be okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
She, if she never listened to music again, she's can take it or leave it. So it's just weird to have her really rocking out to that. And so I want to bring that up because I thought it was funny, and we don't talk much about music.
My wife's kind of in a similar situation. I can't really think of, a whole bunch of bands that I like, rock bands, and I like a lot of sad music too. Ben Howard. I don't know how to pronounce the guy's last name. Is it Frusciante? John Frusciante? Frusciante?
Frusciante. Yeah,
Frusciante.
He just came back to the Chili Peppers,
dude,
last year, I think.
His music, the song to the Siren, bro. So I like a lot of that. I like Norma Jean, Radiohead, stuff like that. And so my wife's, I'll never hear her tune into anything like that, except for Highly Suspect. She loves Highly Suspect. And in fact, we went to one of those intimate shows, where like you go and you go to this venue that's normally kind of big, but they've got it in a smaller section of the, of the place there. And so the venue, and there's a limited number, a couple hundred instead of thousands of people. It's only a couple hundred. And so it's more intimate. Right. And we paid good money to go to that. We went to the Highly Suspect show, and that was just mind blowing, dude. That guitarist is just through the, oh man, unbelievable. But also the idea that, that she's also in a similar situation with her work too, that she's, and she's been doing artsy things, putting together, she actually made a chaplet. It's a prayer bead kind of thing, like a rosary, but it's a different number of beads and it's a different kind of thing. And she made one for a friend of ours that was kind of a special friend that we got, and we want to send that out to them and everything. So she's been doing that and knitting. She made a bunch of these coasters because she's sick and tired of me leaving cups that end up, there's all this water and stuff all over the place, and it's sweating and all that, the cups and everything.
You don't respect the wood?
I don't. Oh. Yeah. And that bothers her. She demands that I respect the wood. And so so she does that. She's been making all different things with knitting, and even work with metal and things that require linking and kind of this threading that goes around it to keep stuff in place. She's even doing that diamond art, which is really hard. My mom made this massive diamond art picture. I shared it on Facebook and Twitter of a really popular painting of the Virgin Mary and Jesus. That's my favorite, with angels all around, and it's a beautiful picture. My mom made it, and it inspired my wife to get involved in that whole diamond art thing. So she, during the house arrest, right? Because we're not sick, so we're not technically quarantined, but the idea of separation, that we're all in our homes and stuff. And her job is to walk dogs. And so she goes and she walks dogs for doctors and nurses and lawyers and people who go around speaking, corporate people and everything. And so nice homes, nice dogs and stuff. And but the thing is, they're all home. And so some of them, they have enough money that they say, look, we love you. You've been with us for years now. We want to keep you going. And we understand that this would affect you. So even though we're home, we want you to walk the dog. Right. But not everybody's like that. And so it's been a blessing and a curse in a way, because on the one hand, it's really hit home. It's hit the pocketbook. And yet on the other hand, it's made it so that it's opened up time for her creative energies. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I'm really, really glad to see her doing that, and stuff like that. So I relate to it, dude. And I know your wife. And so she knows me too, man. She made that, she shared that meme on my Facebook, dude, of me after watching a scary movie at night before bed, and it's this little Chihuahua dude that like turns its head like it heard something, and its eyeballs are just bugging out. And I was like,
oh, I didn't see that.
Dude, it's hilarious. And I'm like, you know me. And she goes, oh, I definitely know you. So yeah, I relate to that, man. But books, dude, like I haven't been reading, but what books have you been reading, dude?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I have been reading a nonfiction book about I can't remember what it's called. Something like it's for marketing, dealing with like ad campaigns and Facebook and Amazon and stuff like that. Something like for authors who hate math or something. I don't know. It's got a silly title that I can't remember. It's written by Chris Fox. I've been reading that rather. It's not giving me anything that I don't already know so far. I'm about maybe a third of the way through it, and got an audiobook from I got Armand Rosamilia's first Dirty Deeds book, and I listened to maybe the first hour and 45 minutes of that so far. I think it's like a 4-hour book or something. I've been enjoying that. It's a crime noir thing about a guy who gets hired to kill children by their parents, basically like go off my kid kind of thing. But instead of following through, he pretends to do it and basically hooks them up with a new life.
That's a fascinating concept.
It really is. And there's actually a lot of baseball stuff in there too, because the protagonist, this guy, he's a baseball card collector. Mm-hmm. So you can really hear
his love for baseball.
Yeah, and baseball cards. But audiobooks are a weird thing for me. I'm a little, I don't know, I've never been diagnosed ADHD or ADD or whatever, but I wonder whether I am, just because I do have a hard time focusing on one thing. I've got way too many hobbies and interests, like just nuts.
You're a Renaissance man, though. You should maybe be popping some addies, but the thing is that you are a Renaissance man.
I've always been like a jack of all trades and master of none. You know, it's like I got decent at skateboarding. I got good at playing guitar. I taught myself how to paint.
Write books.
I'm writing books. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's what it feels like, but master of none. But the writing is something that I've really tried to focus. I've given up on touring the world in a band several years ago. So, but the writing thing is the one that I've taken the most serious. Yeah, so I've been reading that, and I know I'm reading something else that I can't even remember right offhand. But I'm reading another book for a possible blurb. But dude, I saw some movies recently. One of the movies I saw was called My Friend Dahmer. Have you seen that?
No, but I've seen the preview for it.
Okay, I guess it's based on a graphic novel.
It's like him in high school, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it was good. It was well done. It was about what I expected, I suppose. I thought maybe it would be a little bit more. I mean, I knew that he wasn't going to be off killing people,
right? It's like the making of a killer. Like who is he before? Like what was his life like?
Right. And I'm from, I read, his dad wrote a book. I can't remember what it's called, but I read that like, 20 years ago or something. And I can't remember anything about the book, but I'm one of these people who I do have an interest in the brains of serial killers and why they do what they do, because it's just so, I don't get it. And I was just talking to my son the other day because he listens to true crime podcasts, and it kind of just been freaking his girlfriend out. And we were laughing about there are some people who are just downright fanatic about serial killers.
Yeah.
And I explained to her that I think that the reason why people take such an interest is because, I suppose there's two. One could be, wow, what does it feel like to kill a person? And then they could have some kind of like, give this person godlike status because they've been there, they've done something that's the grim side of
right,
the obsession with that. The other would be that the idea of being a serial killer is so far reserved from your own self and who you are that it's fascinating, because the idea of, and I've talked about this before, if someone like broke into my house and I had a gun, I'm not one of these people who automatically would just be like, well, you just screwed up, buddy, and then I put a bullet in between their eyes.
Right.
I'm more of a please get out or I will shoot your knee. You know, I'm not a violent person, and the idea of just taking someone's life, unless of course I know for a fact that my wife and kids are in danger. Well, my son, he's the only one who still lives here, my youngest. Yeah. But then, I'm sure business could be taken care of, and then I would just deal with the repercussions of the PTSD afterwards, whatever. But if there were no like immediate, like, oh, there's no doubt about it, we're gonna die here, and it was just some dude, some thug that's looking for some silverware to get some rock or something, I don't have the mindset to just have the knee-jerk reaction to just, I'm going to kill this person because I have the right there on my house. I'm not one of those people. I know people like that are just like,
I'm a little bit like that.
Right. And I know that.
I had to teach my kids about that and say, like, look, man, like teaching about guns and saying, you don't, even with play guns, don't point at people's faces, and I'm trying to teach them not even to put their finger on the trigger unless they're playing a game where they're like trying to be army guys or whatever, that to teach them basic safety things, and saying that, I know people, and that's why maybe the influence that I know people who've, tried to be the guy that's like, hey, mister, I don't know why you're here, and I'm afraid to shoot you. And they're either dead or maimed for a very long time, for the rest of their lives. And so like, I'm kind of one of those guys that's like, you don't aim for the knee. Right. But I know what you're saying though. And I
think part of that is my empathetic nature, because I have been that guy making stupid decisions, breaking into a house or severely vandalizing something because I'm young and drunk or just young and stupid, and thinking that they're, not thinking about repercussions, or not thinking about this is costing someone money, or this is wrong, or, and then have fortunately kind of woke up and been like, was I an asshole kind of thing. So I have a lot of empathy for particularly younger people, let's say, or even drug addicts who are clearly doing things that they wouldn't do if they were in the right state of mind, whether they be drunk or in the middle of a drug addiction. So if someone were to, break into my home, and I guess what I'm saying is I would like to know the details. If it was some rando that was just like, well, I'm here to rape you and your kids and your wife and then kill you and dismember you, then dude's gonna die,
Yeah.
But but if it's some dude with, I don't know, some young thug, then I don't know, man. I wouldn't want to. I would think that I would be like, you know what, man, I wouldn't put my arm around him and go, dude, son, I've been where you're at.
Right.
I wouldn't do that. But I don't know. I have thoughts on young people being sent to prison too for stuff that I don't know. I was talking to somebody about this recently, about getting caught, because sometimes you see people who do something and then they apologize after they've been caught. And then people are like, oh, he only apologized because he got caught. And who's to say that that's not a sincere apology? There is something to be said about living a certain way, or having doing something wrong, not having an understanding of that, and then getting caught, and then waking up to what it was that you've done. I speak, I guess, from experience. I started smoking weed and getting drunk and stuff at a pretty early age, at 12. And I remember doing under the influence of these things. And when you start to do those things, drinking or drugs or whatever, you don't even really necessarily have to be under the influence at that moment, but your mind is in that kind of you're in a new mindset because you're living a different lifestyle. Your morals are different now. And when you're 12 and you're hanging out with, older people than you, and you're partying, and your body's feeling a certain way it's never felt before. It's very freeing. You're feeling invincible. And I got caught doing some stuff, and ended up getting on probation, and it was a wake-up call, man.
Yeah.
And I did end up apologizing, and it was a legitimate apology. And it was like, I had an epiphany. It was like, well, what was I thinking?
Right.
You know, so I have,
consequences are a bitch. Like, I mean, and I'm not saying that as like, oh, shoot to kill kind of guy. Right.
Yeah.
But just simply saying, you know, that's the whole thing. And consequences, if somebody apologizes in light of the consequences, you know, that doesn't mean that they are insincere, because then they're going to live with the consequences of this. And so when will it become sincere? Like, is there a waiting period?
Yeah.
Like you're supposed to wait a couple months and then we'll trust it. Like, no, if that person says they're sorry, now you can still, it doesn't mean you have to trust them right away.
Mm-hmm.
That's, you know, and I think it's, you know, talking about probation, even if it wasn't a legal probation, a moral one, that someone says, look, man, you know, my mom did that to me where I really messed up, man, on something. And she's like, look, you really betrayed my trust. And I forgive you because I apologized. I got busted. And she goes, I forgive you, but you need to earn my trust back. And that's a probation period. And so she trusted the sincerity of my apology because she doesn't know my heart. She doesn't have a magic crystal ball, but time will tell. Mm-hmm. And in that time and that consistency of changing that, you know, and it would be great, you know, in a moment when you're in the dark or whatever, and, you know, somebody's in your home, to be able to have a conversation, you know, that would be nice.
Should I kill you right now, or should I just go for the knee?
You know, should I go for the knee? Are you that good? You know, most people are not. Most people who even have home protection, stuff like that, they don't practice, you know. And so being in that situation, adrenaline pumping, they're probably not doing Wim Hof breathing exercises. So they're like, so they're not really good with adrenaline control, and they're scared and shaky, and they're scared, and you can't, and it would be hard to tell. And it's one of those things that really, it's an ex post facto. You're going to learn it afterward, and to kind of learn the circumstance. And some people will live sadly with the trauma of knowing that maybe that person was just somebody that was down on their luck, to be honest. And that's unfortunate. And that's also, though, part of the danger of being the person who goes into a house they don't know. That's as dangerous as the other way around. Yeah. Because the person doesn't know who's the person here in the house. What do they have? What's their temperament? And it's a tough deal, man. So I understand what you're saying, dude.
Yeah. And because I've lived through that, I've learned from it, and I'm not even remotely close to being I wasn't remotely close to being that person that I was at 12 soon after. I mean, I you know, continued to, you know, party and stuff after being kind of scared straight for a while. And then, you know, I had my ups and downs and with that over the years until I finally quit for good. But for someone who has been a different person, not done any kind of prison time for it, and became, you know, it took a lot of self-inventory over the years, tried to learn from my mistakes, tried to learn from others' mistakes, you know, and preempt any kind of like stupid thing that I might run into. And I've seen friends of mine and family that have done that too. Mm-hmm. And so I have a real soft spot when somebody makes a dumb decision in the moment and their life is over, especially if it's a decision that I've done. Probably everybody listening to this at one point in their life has drove a car when they were not supposed to, while they were under the influence of some, you know, and there are people who have done that and they've killed someone, either they don't know or somebody that they loved in the car,
or they died.
Yeah. And their life is over either way. And their life is over. And that's the same thing that we have done, but we didn't get caught. We weren't in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's just, you know, the dice rolled differently for us, or God was looking out for us. But my point is that that's part of my deep empathy for, certainly not for serial killers. which is what started this.
Yeah, Dahmer, dude. Yeah, but the people in the film. I mean, Dahmer, the original Dahmer movie. You know, he's going into these gay sex clubs, right? And he's having sex with people that are putting themselves in really dangerous situations. And they go home, and a lot of them are younger, and they're going home, and they end up in his freezer. And it sucks.
But have you not ever had a one night stand before? You know what I'm saying?
No. Okay, no. Yes, I've had. That's what I'm saying.
You're playing dangerous, and you could end up in a freezer.
Yes, that's the thing is, yes, I could end up having Michael Meyer, popping out of the closet or something.
Michelle Myers,
getting me, Michelle Meyer, and so like, yes, and that's the thing. Or I mean, look, man, I've been with lots of ladies, right? And I know people who were with very few, and they're living with herpes all over their face. I mean, I'm not exactly belittling that, but that's serious. Mm-hmm. I'm zero problems my whole life. And I look at that, and that's a tragic thing. But it's also one of those things. It's like Russian roulette.
Yeah.
And I say, these are games of Russian roulette, and it's a terrible thing, but there's a bullet there too. You may not get the bullet. You might get it the next time. Someone might get it the first time they spin that revolver. Right.
Yeah.
And it's the game, and it's a sad, terrible, tragic thing. Not to belittle it, but and I only brought that up about the Dahmer thing because that's something that those dudes experienced, it's different, of course, with John Wayne Gacy, and the thing about serial killers, I understand that too. Like I really liked watching movies like that to understand kind of their mind, but I've also read really terrible books. I mean, for example, I read Mein Kampf, not because I like Hitler. Dude, Hitler sucks. He's like the number one bad guy of all time, right? Like there's nothing other than Satan that would be worse. And maybe in some ways it's the same. And so, but to sit there and say, what is the brain? Like what created what we all know was a cataclysmic, world-changing, world-defining person and moment. And the same thing with serial killers. Is why I liked watching Law and Order: Criminal Intent. Is to see the mind in that. It's why I liked the movie Seven. I really liked the movie Seven when I was younger, and watching it and trying to understand the evil genius that would play that movie that way, right, or that storyline that way. And so I understand that. I've never listened to these podcasts, but I'm pretty selective even in my listening. I listen to talk radio and stuff. When I go to bed, I'll pop on some stuff, or old time radio. I've said that I like that. But audiobooks, dude, you mentioned that. I don't know if I've ever listened to an audiobook from beginning to end. Never. And I don't know why that is. I am kind of pretty ADHD. I'm actually diagnosed, right, of this and medicated. And so like, that's a real thing. But the thing about audiobooks, or podcasts were like Serial. That was one that was really popular for a while. The podcast Serial. And, I might be interested in something more like that, but audiobooks, I struggle with it. And a lot of times because I don't like the reading of it. I don't like the way that it's read. Whether it's LibriVox or whatever that is, man. And they're just kind of randos doing it or whatever. There are some that I really like, but I just can't stick with it that long. I'm not in a car long enough. I can imagine if I was in a car, maybe a lot doing that. But if I'm at home, I'll read a book instead of listen. And so,
the guy doing the Armand book is, he's good. I'm sorry, sir. I don't know your name, but is good. And I feel like he's one of these narrators that I feel almost like I like it. I think I would enjoy it more, him reading it, rather than I would me reading the book, because he adds more flavor and personality to the blandness the monotone that I would be doing. But so I watched, My Friend Dahmer, and it was a decent movie. But dude, there's a brand new movie on Shudder that I just watched, and I know you don't have Shudder any longer. Probably I
do. I kept it. We kept it because of the show, because we were going to get rid of it, man. Yeah, we were going to get rid of it. And then we did this huge tailspin for this, and I'm like, well,
Dude.
okay, I'm keeping that bugger now.
Okay, you have to watch this movie.
Yeah.
There's no sex in it. I personally think it would be fine for your kids to watch, but do not. It's called The Beach House.
The Beach
Do
House.
not. There's suggested sex, kind of like a getting up from the bed and putting my shirt back on kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like you can clearly tell what just happened.
Yeah. Or turning the light off and there's a silhouette in the window and they go down and then the light goes off and the saxophone is playing and you're like, oh, I know what's happening.
Yeah. And then a couch pushes a girl off into a dumpster. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then no, but do not read the little like 1-sentence synopsis. I didn't. And I'm so glad that I just threw it on because I knew
Did it spoil it?
It's not a spoiler, but if you don't, the movie has such an intensity to it that if you have no idea what the movie's about, it's going to make the experience really good because you're not sure what's happening. Is this person to be trusted? Who's the antagonist here? What is going to happen? And it's unsettling as you watch it because of that. Because it's a very quiet, slow burn of a movie, and it's so up my alley. But it has body horror in it too, and I'm a huge body horror fan. It's indie film. The acting is great. The cinematography is great. The effects are good. And dude, it is one of the best movies I've seen this year. I think I gave it like a 4.7984.
A 4.7984. Yeah, dude.
I think I gave it a 4.75. Loved it. And I can't wait to hear you. But again,
you're gonna stick with those quarter scores, dude.
I got that from you.
Oh well, your logic makes a little more sense though, because at least like IMDb allows that. It doesn't allow the 2.3s or whatever.
I got that from you because when we originally did this, I thought that we were just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5.
Yeah.
And then you started doing like a 4 point whatever. And I'm like, okay, he's going to do a 4 point. It has to either be a 4.5 or 5 or a 4. Or maybe it's 4.75. But you're like, I think that's a 4.8. And I'm like, what?
Yeah,
that's
dude.
not a score.
Yeah. It's a little better. It's a little better than the 4.75.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
4.8.
anyway, dude, The Beach House, man.
It's good. It's good.
I can see people not enjoying it just because if they're not into that indie slow burn, nothing happens for a while.
Yeah.
But that tension is there because you're like, this is a horror movie. Crap is eventually going to hit the fan, and I have no idea where it's flying from.
Yeah.
So stay away from the synopsis for sure. Just put it on and enjoy it. It's a great movie.
I'm trying to stay away, to be honest. And you can't do it all the way, man. Like luckily I have you, because I can say, hey man, is this a good movie? And you can say, yes, it's scary, or it's, this is in it or that's in it. And you don't give much away as to the storyline, but I'm almost avoiding previews anymore.
Yeah, dude, they're horrible.
Dude, I hate it. And here's a good example, man. Insidious, in the preview, it shows the medium chick and the psychic chick, and she's like, it's not the house that's haunted, it's your son. And I'm thinking, dude, you don't find that out till they move out of a house.
Mm-hmm.
And you would not think that. You would wonder, but that's really a twist. Yeah. So what are they doing that for? Or what's it called, man? Friday the 13th.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Friday the 13th. I saw previews for it and I stopped it because it was like 1, 2, and it showed all these kill scenes. And I'm like,
oh no.
I'm like, why are you doing that? Who's the person who thought that would be great? Now it's not in order, right? And so it's out of order.
Who's gonna die?
You know who's gonna die. The scenarios and the situations, kind of like the circumstances around it. So I knew, for example, the guy, the owner of the property for the camp. I knew that guy was going to die when he got the ride from the police officer, and he hops out and it's raining and he runs up and he sees the sign and there's a flashlight there. And he goes, can I help you? Oh, and he starts talking to this person. I knew that was going to be a death scene. right? And so there was, which, given the way that it does it in different scenes in that movie, there are some times where you think death's going to happen, but it doesn't. And so it builds that suspense. Well, that was gone for this. I knew it was going to happen. And so stuff like that. But I'm like, I want to watch these movies and I want to be genuinely scared. Like tonight, I'm really hoping, I'm hoping to be biting my nails, man. I'm ready for this.
Do you know anything about it?
I did see part of a preview for this, and it was a while ago that I saw it, but I don't know. I saw a preview for the newer one too. And so I don't really, I don't know. I know that it involves something, a creature that was frozen, and that there are a bunch of people in it. It's not like one person or two people. It's like a team. And there's questions about the team, but I don't really know anything beyond that. I don't know what happens with the thing.
Trailers. Yeah. They're just, they're the worst. And I'll tell you this, man, from personal experience, if I put a movie on that I don't even know what the genre is, let alone the summary, I'm probably going to like it. If the acting is good and there's not like really anything to laugh at, I'm probably going to like it. And that was The Beach House. Toward the end, when I kind of figured out, what was going on and what kind of movie this was and stuff, I had paused it. And when you pause it, you can, the thing shows up on the bottom and it'll say The Beach House, and then it'll have the 1-line synopsis.
Yeah.
So I did read it, and I was like, oh, I'm so glad that I didn't read that, because then I would have known already what I'm getting into and what this movie is about. There would have been no mystery about it at all. So even something like that, man, and I'm telling you, you throw a movie on that you had known nothing about, and it's a whole other experience. It's really
way preferable. And so this is really cool because, that's true of any movie in some ways, but I feel like it's maybe particularly true in things that are suspense, things that are, slashers, any kind of within the umbrella term of horror, right? And mystery. So like anything like that, if a mystery, if you show too much of it, I think that's so terrible, because then you're like, well, wait a second. Part of the fun of this is trying to figure it out and thinking you've got it, but you were wrong. Or the horror is when is the moment that this is going to happen? People are going to die. Like that's in, Friday the 13th, man, people are going to die. It's a dude on the cover with a freaking machete, man. Like, and some campers and junk. So you're like, oh, okay. Or the Just Before Dawn, man. They're all like out in the woods, and there's this, and it shows the creepy killer dude behind in the background, the imagery and stuff. And it shows them this cool kind of the new Blu-ray of it or whatever. It's really cool drawing, really cool. It might be a painting, but it's really cool. And he's standing in the back in his jacket and stuff, and he's got this huge honking knife. It's obvious he's not friendly, and it's obvious that knife ain't for fun, like he's not just, like, oh, the knife, it ain't no big deal. I'm just here, so that is what's on is going to be like Donkey Kong at this point. It's going to be bad for them. And so why show anything? Why, but I also understand the need to get people out there, and so I kind of have a personal position right now, especially with movies to do with this show, that I'm just like, nope. I'm not watching a preview anymore. No more. I want to go in every time. So this is as close as I've been to not having any preview at all. This is the closest, because I don't really know anything about it. But from now on, I'm avoiding them like the plague. So yeah.
Well, let's get into it, man. Let's watch The Thing.
Let's do this, man.
Hey everybody, it's Kevin Goatee.
It's Kevin Israel.
And you're listening to Gutting the Sacred Cow on the Project Entertainment Network. Hey Kevin, what exactly is Gutting the Sacred Cow?
Gutting the Sacred Cow is a podcast where we invite comedians and talented people every episode to come on and trash a movie that you probably love or someone you know loves.
That's right. Our guests have trashed such films as Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Gone with the Wind, Grease, even Star Wars. Can you imagine the balls on that guy? Did he succeed?
I cannot.
Yeah, well, listen and you'll find out. But this is Kevin Goatee and Kevin Israel for Gutting the Sacred Cow.